With fuel and supplies running low, I decided it was time to return from our hunt, just as the second year of the war came about. In my fleet's wake there were 20 burned-out Orc planets, plus 2 Chaos fleets pulverized by Macross-style torpedo volleys, and their wrecks pushed into suns. Almost 1,000 vessels captured, half of them transports of smaller size and mining barges, a few factory ships and nearly 400 warships including the Overlord battlecruiser and 5 Grand Cruisers, then 83 Orc ships including 1 ironclad battleship and a dozen cruisers. Only half of what I had hoped to achieve with my campaign, but the local pirates wouldn't simply stay put where I first located them from Sutha, and allow me to capture them, instead hiding into deeper parts of the maelstrom. Even worse, various Astartes forces started shadowing my fleet, salamanders and scorpions and even star phantoms and firehawks. I did keep a smokescreen of 200 smaller ships around, and kept buying fuel and torpedoes by the thousand, so this might have raised alarm bells, especially with so much traitor activity going around. Someone must have tipped off the pirates too, because too often we arrived to find pirate ports and holdouts deserted. My fleet was fast, but astropath messages were faster. Even worse, the astral claws had still not been completely vanquished. Their master of the forge and many of his tech marines along with some escorts and 1 cruiser managed to avoid my fleet and all pursuit from all the hunting forces, which was eerie and not a good sign. On board the capital vessels we had captured were 117 atmospheric incendiary torpedoes and 4 cyclonic ones, plus a dozen vortex torpedoes and even 3 biological exterminatus virus warheads. The captured battle barge at Badab had 6 more virus warheads, which the biologist Magi from Forge Riser were allowed to retrieve. Better not make a scandal out of that, as I had my own samples now, hidden in a pocket dimension. Luckily, due to the presence of my Blood Angels nobody could claim my staffet and the barge, although it was certain many Navy and Astartes captains would have wanted to. So we returned to Badab, and began the tedious task of dealing with tithes and splitting of loot, and then recovering my occupation troops. This time Badab wasn't completely burned down, only half of it, perhaps due to my Katakans and their armored forces moving fast to capture key factories and a couple hive cities. The loyal Astartes were out for blood though, and assaulted Hive Dominar in the Palace of Thorns Fortress Monastery with overwhelming force, leaving only burning buildings and shattered bodies. In their defense, the astral auxiliaries and their aspirants fought to the last, using advanced weapons like conversion beamers and plasma cannons, which caused many casualties towards Astartes chapters such as Kacharadons or the Exorcists. 100 times fewer losers than without my involvement, which probably ruined some well-crafted plans among the Great Enemy or the conflict-stirring Inquisitors, or both. From Badab, we simply tracted the Ramillies staffet with the Icarus to the nearby Forge Angstrom, a low-level forge, but enough for my needs. The Astral Claws battle barge made the jump by itself, having received emergency repairs from the Riser Tech priests and my own tentacled engineers. Can I say I was received with warmth and friendliness? Nope. The fabricator of Angstrom was exiled here from Forge Riser for a reason, and it wasn't for his polite manners. I had to deploy my corvettes and parade them around, just to get an audience. His spire was the most advanced piece of technology I have seen, from holofields and force fields and Auspex scanner of a dozen types, and really advanced Skitarii weapons and armor. And that was only what I could see as a visitor. They had no Titans and Night Forges here, but made the best power armor available. No wonder the guy was so proud and independent. Everyone else needed him. But then, I unloaded on him 100 STC templates, and he switched gears, just like that. Rogue Trader Lancefire, you leave me at a loss, for words and actions too. This wealth of knowledge is priceless, and my forge doesn't have anything that could repay you. The fabricator said with a concerned voice and examined my space wolf again. I was pretty sure nobody else had a real wolf from the space wolves themselves. Correct, but also not. You were in contact with the Lamenters, even providing them with power armor, weapons and gunships. It's them I want to save, before they join the traitor side in the Badab War. I can also fix their curse, like how I'm doing right now for the Blood Angels. I explained in a level voice, and patted my loyal Canis. I will not get involved in that stupid intra-Astartes conflict. The fabricator boomed in displeasure, his voxcasters screeching with binary code. I just sighed and opened my null box. You will join Fabricator, and you know it too. Perhaps not yet, but it is inevitable. But I don't need military forces, since I am withdrawing my ships back into the fringe. I need an Astartes chapter, and the Lamenters need a home and relief from their gene curse. Also, relief from the bad luck which plagues them since their founding, I said gently as my rosette blared with security codes and overrides. The Fabricator glanced inside my chest box and waved a few tentacles in annoyance. Another Inquisitor in disguise? No wonder you get away with everything, Lord Lancefire. Okay, I will place an astropath call to the Lamenters. Nothing else? With a wide grin, I tapped the next data slate. Here is a warpless drive template, just like Forge Riser has. Same stuff that powers the Icarus fleet carrier. Also the strongest ship reactor and the Imperium. I need someone to work on this, miniaturize it for battlecruiser size. Someone with access to rare minerals from the Maelstrom Zone, and advanced knowledge of plasma technology. It will need angstrom scale quality control, but this is the name of your Forge world, correct? The old tech priest scanned the data slate a dozen times, mechadendrites trembling in excitement. It is possible after all. A Macarius pattern space drive, found by the saint himself. A dozen Forge worlds already have the ancient drive template, Fabricator. From my knowledge, an entire Crusade fleet was trapped in a space hulk, and then released somehow, with many ships having these templates hidden in the engine rooms. Also had those Macarius pattern heavy tanks and the armed sentinels. Out in the fringe, I have found a Macarius Vitrix battleship that Forge Retribution now works to restore. I explained with a patient smile. Everything I said was true, from a certain point of view. Even so, this isn't a minor favor or even a great favor. Do you need exclusive rights for the smaller drive, if we manage to miniaturize it? Your trader dynasty will become the richest in the galaxy. Heavy cruisers and battlecruisers are 100 times more numerous than battleships or fleet carriers. Everyone will have to buy it from you. The Magus suggested as an alternative payment. That could work. Let's say a contract for a 50 years exclusive production rights. You produce and sell them in my house's name. Firstly for the Inquisition black ships, and then new Navy battlecruisers or Astartes barges. But after that, the pressure for more warpless drives will become too great, and we will have to release it to all Mechanicus forges. I bet you don't want a Mars enforcement fleet coming here. I mused out loud. The Fabricator was a very smart man. Inquisition first, huh? That would block most demands right from the start. I don't know what kind of alloys will be needed to produce the same energy in a smaller volume. What about that Starfoot? It will be the base for my Fringe Astartes chapter, like I told you. With a warpless drive it will even be mobile, if very slow. I answered with a pleasant smile. The Magus sighed audibly and opened a trade screen on his cogitator. See anything here that might interest you, Lord Lancefire? He offered in a smaller voice. I checked the screen with knowing eyes. 100 anti-grav gunships and 1,000 armored sentinels. Perhaps 100 Omega pattern Macarius tanks, when you have time to build them. Please, Lord Peth. My forge may be small but we're not poor. May I suggest 200 Fury interceptors for your carrier and a dozen Baneblade tanks? He offered in a pained voice. I shook my head. At most 100 Furies, Magus. They are too big and expensive to maintain. No fuel and ammo for regular Baneblades, not in the Eastern Fringe. Gift them to some guard regiments on Armageddon, they sure need extra power. I proposed instead, knowing that firepower will make a huge difference and save millions of guardsmen. What are those Auspex blocking plates on your Blood Angel's armor? He asked instead, pointing at a screen with my angelic bodyguards getting spied on by many tech priests and servo skulls. That is what is called Blackstone in the Fringe. 10 times more durable than ceramite, and even blocks most warp phenomena like sorcerer spells and curses. Forge Triplex foul mines it by the megaton from a mining planet called Mandragora. Riser also uses it for Astartes armor now, probably after they saw how fast my Blood Angels captured that Starfoot and the traitor's barge, I said while tapping my own Blackstone armor plates. Made sense to protect myself too, even if I was blank. Very useful then, and any Astartes without this Blackstone armor will find themselves at disadvantage. Is that how you are suppressing the curse of your bodyguards? He asked in a more interested tone. partially. The rest is their chapter's secret and I won't go into it. I replied curtly, before faking a surprised thought. I just had an idea. 1,000 specialist tech priests to train the Lamenter's new tech marines, so they can maintain their equipment in the fringe. Pretty much only orcs and tyranids around, and scarce supplies. They would need to be self-sufficient. You're getting close to my final line with this. What if the Lamenters do not come? He wondered curiously. I smiled sweetly. You did mention the curse, right? They will come, Fabricator. They will come running. My voice sounded convinced, although I had mere hope. The Lamenters were prone to warp accidents, and might come very slowly. Woof, Canis exclaimed in agreement. I was getting more convinced every day that my wolf understood words just fine. Of course, warp travel takes very long sometimes. We waited 2 years at Hangstrom for the Lamenters to arrive. Thankfully, they didn't stop by Badab this time, and thus they should escape the century of persecution that would have followed. Of course, Forge Angstrom uses this time to repair and upgrade my starfleet and new battle barge, and fill the corvettes and destroyers as well as the fort's torpedo bunkers with new torpedoes and the armories with tons of weapons and vehicles. They give me a lot, in exchange for those priceless STCs. No money exchange hands though, because my actions around the Magog sector are now spoken of as the Lancefire Crusade, by some administratum officials. The time is not wasted, not at all. But when the Lamenters do come they all come, which makes some sense as they are a fleet-based chapter. 2 battle barges, Mater Lacrimarum and Daughter of Tempests, 9 cruisers, 22 escorts, a dozen support and supply ships and 2 more mobile forge ships. Most excellent, although it is not enough. My own fleet before the Badab Crusade was larger than this. A Lamenter delegation lands on my Icarus, including their chapter master, who doesn't seem too happy to meet me. Nor are his brothers, the sanguinary priests which carry in their blood the renewal gene seed for the next generations of Astartes. I don't care about the corrupted Lamenter seed at all. Whatever happened to their modified gene seed has backfired so badly, that even other Astartes chapters refuse to fight beside them. However, their tactics in combat favor shock assault and close air support tactics, and they are used to performing boarding actions. Pretty much perfect for my needs. You are owed trader Pef Lancefire? We paid our debt dearly, for another one of your kind. Our brothers who departed for the Aeschylus Crusade did not return. Chapter Master Malagim Foros proclaims in a distrustful voice. I nod politely. They chose to join the Death Watch, so their return is in absolutely no way related to me, or even the rogue trader you aided in that crusade. I answer with a shrug, and rest my glove on my wolf's horse-sized head. Canis had grown even larger than I thought possible, but he won't let me ride him. Only my kids get that privilege. Strange, but then I do have plenty ships and dropships to carry me where I need. The man blinks in surprise and glances at his aides. They possibly thought those Lamenters were completely lost, like it sometimes happened in this dangerous galaxy. There are ways to find out, even if the orders he knows hid our brothers from us. Master Foros mutters with a determined voice. Anyways, come. Let's visit the engine room. I bet a throne you have never seen a warpless drive. I demand and walk away, with Sister Hestia flanking me on the right and Canis at my left. The visiting Lamenters debate for a few seconds in finger gestures, probably like you go, I cover the exit if my helmet's visor is correct. Well, they are walking into a trap, but it's not the violent kind. Quite the contrary. Have you noticed I am a blank, just like this lovely lady here? I ask the Astartes with a curious tone. He just nods, not that impressed. I have seen others. And yet, you didn't immediately recruit those blanks for your cursed chapter. Then again, those afflicted with black rage can barely even think, let alone make good decisions. Understandable. I answer in a patient voice, and pat his pauldron in compassion. He deflects my hand in anger. I don't need your pity, rogue trader. Get to the point. Master Hurin of the Astral Claws has fallen to chaos, and dragged his chapter and his allies after them, into treason. Killed him myself a few years ago, just for sport. I also killed the more famous traitor, Primarch Lorga. Might have heard of him, even in your rage-induced stupidity. I explained patiently, while waiting for the elevator to arrive, which given the size of the Icarus took a few minutes. His eyes glow with fury, but he struggles to restrain himself with all his willpower. I guess he must have some control over the black rage, or he wouldn't last as a chapter master. The Lamenters owe the Astral Claws a huge favor. You just made things worse by killing their chapter master. The old Astartes growls in a pained voice. Hestia gestures at me something like "Is he a traitor too?" which the Astartes can certainly see and interpret. Mind your sign words, Null Maiden. We also owe Forge Angstrom a considerable debt for their machines and supplies. It is why we agreed to come, but don't insult us. Master Foros mutters, in a lower tone. I gesture a quick silence. To the silent sister, which makes the Lamenter chuckle sadly, and Canis to make himself smaller and whimper in protest. So, even Space Marines can understand irony. Not you, Canis. The loud woman with the big knife. I console my wolf and pat his head. Is my wolf grinning? I don't think anyone has given space wolves a savant implant before, because my Canis is way too smart, even faking emotions to break the tension. It works a little, as the chapter master shakes his head at our antics and leaves it be. Eventually, we arrive at the tech priest-infested engine room, where 1,000 of them inspect, bless and measure the wondrous ancient machine like they have seen a holy relic. This device is part of the solution to your curse, Astartes. Using these type of engines, ships can travel among stars without entering warp, and the dangers implied with that. Forge Angstrom will provide me warpless engines, that I can gift for your 3 barges and your new starfoot. That's for starters. I explain while Hestia climbs on my wolf and goes exploring. I think she might be a bit upset with me, or she simply wanted to give me privacy. You never know, women are fickle. I have heard a rumor, but it seems true after all. I never seen such a ship engine before, and I think I have seen all of them, he says with wary eyes. Well, after boarding 1,000 ships you probably get to know your way around engines. Well, the STC template is millennia old and probably not complete. That's why only large ships can use this drive, for now. The fabricator is trying to repair the flaws and make it usable for cruisers, but it will take time. The starfoot is more than big enough. It may even need 2 or 3 engines. Perfect place for a fortress monastery, especially after it could travel the stars. I say as we walked around the many suspended bridges and walkways. A perfect place to fall and break your neck, but such is the way things work here. Probably to reduce contact and create an isolation barrier for radiation. I am not sure, as the real science of the engine is way beyond me. And beyond the Mechanicus as well, which is why I need Atrazine to make it, probably in a time-locked field to save on time. Anyway, there are no serfs or indentured convicts around the engine, and probably never will be. The engine is too rare, expensive and hard to maintain. Only tech priests, servo skulls and servitor cyborgs are allowed to service the drive, with a core of engine seers learning their way around the pipes and fusion cells and what else. Can the ship fly through warp? That has tactical advantages too. The man asks me curious. Dragged behind a big ship, yes. The Icarus has 10 Geller fields and 4 void shields, but no warp engine. Only has this Macarius pattern drive, plus normal plasma engines for real space maneuvers. I explain patiently. Like they moved starfoots, makes sense. The Astartes mused to himself. The former Astral Claws fort had a single Geller field. Better than nothing, but I wouldn't risk my people flying on an accident ready to happen. The Litany has 2 Geller generatoriums and another mechanical one covering the drive. And we still got invaded by demons once. I conclude as we head back towards the reception lounge. You really killed Primarch Lorga? I'd have thought something like that would be voxed all around the Imperium and beyond. The old Space Marine asks a bit doubtful. I have recordings, although it isn't much. I lanced him for a second with my cruiser and he died. My mother killed Fulgrim as well. Wasn't so easy as this other traitor, though. She was a blank too, and could restrain his powers while the rest of her team chopped and shot at the serpent. I explain in a softer voice. Hopefully that serpent demon won't get revived, not after Istobon sent his melted corpse into a black hole, with a sacrificial ship. Another one? At this rate, we Astartes will be left with nothing to do. he complained in a half-joking tone. I smiled and didn't comment. Some truths hurt too much. At the elevator, Hestia and Alia waited beside Canis. Woo! Woof woof. The wolf signaled in warning. Bridge, talk to me. I asked on the Vox speed. Astartes forces inbound, my lord. Believed to be executioners and mantis warriors. Fleet is redeploying to defend the Forged World, per section F/113. My exo-aunt explained in an assured voice. I should probably give this aunt a cruiser of her own, she was capable enough. With a frown, I tapped my glove to check the Tesseract labyrinth. A mirror of the Angstrom star system appeared in my mind, including all the ships. Real-time too, possible with whatever Necronta technology the labyrinths were made from. No need to wait for return augers or analyze gravity distortions. Those astral claws, sneaky bastards. Must have heard of my fleet repairing at Angstrom. Another sneaky fleet was moving in behind the sun, thinking themselves hidden by the solar flares. In a second, that invisible fleet behind the sun vanished into my labyrinth, and will never be spoken of again. If nobody knew it was there, nobody would know it has vanished, right? A free Mars-class battlecruiser? I really needed one for my set. Those 9 Tyrant-class cruisers were also nice, and so it was the Endless Redemption battle barge, with 3 Astartes companies on board, including 10 Terminators. It was really worth to stick around here. Good things happen for those who wait with patience. The fleet advancing on us from the direction of Badab sector is pretty big for the way most battles take place. Both the Executioners and the Mantis Warriors have a dozen cruisers and 2 barges, while the Astral Claws have 1 cruiser and over 80 destroyers, because they haven't paid taxes in the past 200 years. The Imperium only just noticed, which fills me with great confidence about their decision processes. Also, I think they're not after the Forged World, but trying to recapture their lost barge and fort. Wenchen, Nova Cannon in middle of Traitor's escort group. I demand out loud, just to test how the Lamentor's master reacts. Right away, Captain. Targeting. 1 minute till they enter range. My uncle replies from his Dominator cruiser. Master Foros winces in pain. Do you have to fight them? He asks in pleading voice. As I was saying, the problem all Astartes have is this falling to chaos idiocy. Doesn't happen for blanks, or pariahs, because we simply don't give a throne about the warp. No corruption, no mutations, not even voices in our heads promising eternal life for our souls. What we need, is a million blanks to replace all these corrupted and treasonous cretins. Isn't it so, Astartes? I ask in a teasing voice, and fling 3 more Nova mines in the path of the 3 enemy squadrons. The blinding flare of the Nova shells blocks all sensors, preventing anyone seeing what's happening, so 100 destroyers simply vanish, after the light subsides. Not obliterated but into my labyrinth, so nobody knows about it. Captain, the enemy fleet is decimated, all the destroyers gone, almost. My Auspex officer yells in excitement. I sigh audibly and key my Vox. You missed 3 targets, Wenchen. Circle around for another shot. My uncle is too surprised to comment. 100 destroyers in 1 Nova shell was beyond believable, even if theoretically possible, on the luckiest shot ever. As you say, Captain. We'll do better next time. Wenchen answers a few seconds later. Did you just admonish your clansmen for missing 3 destroyers? Chaplain Delos grumbles from my left side, while my aunt snickers in amusement. I would have got them all, plus Nova shells are expensive. I answer in a timid voice. Nobody on my bridge comments, because they probably believe me. My luck is the stuff of legend, and they know it. Only Hestia shows me a single finger sign, that says bullshit. Canis mules and eyes my glove with a knowing look. How can he even know what I did? Damn bullshit wolf. Incoming Vox transmission for the Astral Claws cruiser. My Vox officer claims, but doesn't let it through. We rarely banter with enemies, unless they are orcs. Orcs are fun. What do you say, Lamentor? Ready to board their barges after next salvo? I ask curious, while directing 2 wings of 100 corvettes to flank the traitors from both sides. Not letting my prizes escape. The attacking barges already lost a layer of void shields and the cruisers are defenseless now, after getting splashed by my Nova mines. Boarding their barges will be very costly. My chapter will suffer catastrophic losses. The chapter master reminds me with a heavy voice. Yes, hopefully nearly total losses. And then, I will provide blank recruits to replace your fallen brothers. No more curse, plus amazing reputation for ending the Badab War in a single day. I will even lend you my blood angels and a Katakan regiment with sentinels and rapiers. I argue while keeping watch on Wenshin's cruiser. Should be in position in a few minutes. And we keep their captured ships, for my chapter? Master Foros asks in a calm voice. I know that voice, because Ludvius uses it when we're about to die. However, the blood angels will risk their lives too. I glance at Delos and raise an eyebrow. You want a free battle barge, brother? The blood angel chaplain laughs, as if he has heard the best joke ever. Why not, my lord? Let's end this war today. All troops on deployment duty, prepare for boarding actions. Fighters, prepared to launch after Nova detonation. Astartes, teleport rooms. I order rapidly while the Icarus machine spirit keeps track of the thousands of vectors and changes coming from our fleet and the enemy. I also have my secondary option, using the Tesseract to keep an eye on the system. Then, another flare and more Nova mines, plus a few plasma warheads inside the main Astartes barracks on board the barges. The cruiser's bridges get vaporized by more plasma warheads, because I intend to give these valuable hulls to forge angstrom. Cruisers are too big to get vaporized, so they have to stay. Nobody says they need to be intact. The traitors had a bit too many space marines, by going over legal limits, but I also can't make it too easy for the Lamenters. Their rage and thirst curses have returned, but much stronger than before. Not one of them can fully control their curse, and in battle they fight to the last drop of blood. And then, there's the bad luck and aura of melancholy, which are certainly warp consequences of their damaged gene seed. Perhaps the Emperor isn't happy with them, or some dark god plays a tragedy with their souls. Maybe both of those things. Hestia gestures for permission to go as well, and I allow it, for all the sisters. Pariahs will keep things honest, as Lamenters didn't have psychers or librarians, nor did they have Blackstone armor and Rosaries shields yet. 4 enemy barges, thus 4 squads of Ogrins get to go as well. In melee, they are worth 2 space marines each, and boarding actions always have melee. Battle damage is inevitable, so why not use the big sticks? May the Emperor have mercy on your souls. I whisper as the ship boardings begin. It is not pretty at all, but we have combat servitors, and they don't. Serfs are not as effective in tight spaces, plus they still feel pain and fear. The tech priests and the Katakans follow after the whirlwind of bolter fire and secure deck after deck, snipers targeting librarians and other psychers, while the silent sisters act as magic shields, preventing warp fire or other spells from incinerating the front lines. Neophytes and aspirants are all thrown in the grinder, all 3 Astartes chapters bleeding themselves dry at the bidding of a chaos follower and a greedy rogue trader. The fight keeps going for a week, because Astartes die hard. My blood angels die even harder, taking 5 enemies down for one of theirs, but they are not invulnerable. The Lamenters fare much worse, and lose 900 battle brothers for less than 800 kills. Perhaps howling in rage and foaming at the mouth isn't the best strategy. But one by one, the battle barges are conquered, and then the cruisers and even some support ships. The blood angels keep calm, and capture 100 Astartes of each traitor chapter when they offer to surrender. The old chapter master is mortally wounded and asks to see my and their apothecary. He shouldn't even be alive. Grievous wounds probably caused by a chainsaw and a dozen bolter holes have shredded him beyond recognition. And yet he still lives. Lord Lancefire, you have to promise. Save my chapter somehow, be the next master. Do anything in your powers. I saw the angel, and now he stands by your shoulder. Sang. He whispers and dies, as I glance to my side, to see a vanishing wing. I wasn't the only one to see the sanguinary appear. The sanguinary priests, the apothecaries, a dozen tech marines, they all saw him. The angel of death came to collect. Chapter Master. You are now our leader, Lord Pef Lancefire. There is no doubt. Their chief priest announces to the mourning lamenters. All right. I have the blood angel gene seed, but it shouldn't be much problem. It's from the same Primarch. I muse out loud. Oh, that explains some things, though not why are you still a rogue trader and not on bail receiving the organs? The priest asks me in a curious voice. I think all the lamenters have the same question. I'm not a space marine though. This angel gave me his blood, when I was injured on Astobon. Even gave me the red thirst, which was pretty bad for a few hours. But I got better. I answered with a wide grin. They're not sure if to believe me. Really? A tech marine asks in surprise. I nod politely. Take blood samples, if you want to check. It's not like sanguineous genes can't be seen on a medical auspex. And they do. A whole battery of tests in fact. I'm used to tests, but I wish they knew about anesthetics. I endure and get over it. It seems I will need even more concubines. Oh well. Perhaps I could find more silent sisters. I have gotten used to time itself being a currency of the galaxy. So, when the fabricator of Angstrom tells me he might need 80 years just to reduce the size of an engine from 10 kilometers battleships to 7 kilometers like a battle cruiser, it appears natural and a short time. I nod wisely, and advise him to use 20 years just to train a conclave of tech priests by building big engines and selling those to the Imperial Navy. More minds and brains are better than just a few, and the Imperium will need these specialists anyway. He agrees, after a minute of silent deliberation. We shall do so, Lord Lancefire. So, you have an Astartes chapter now. A very reduced one, Fabricator. No combat-able space marines remain for my lamenters. Most neophytes and aspirants are gone as well, and their gene seed is still damaged. We don't even have enough crew to man all these captured vessels. I explain in a tired voice. And the same for those traitor marines that you preserved. The Inquisition will arrive for investigation and possibly execution of the survivors. The Archmagos says in a confident tone. I highly doubt that. In fact, the High Lords on Terra will most likely impose penance and a century of crusade to these failed Astartes. That will take a few months. Let's make sure the executioners and the Mantis warriors get some aid in recovering their numbers, plus 1,000 tech marines each. Plenty of gene seeds can be recovered from the corpses, plus they do have intact stocks in their gene vaults. And what stock of men will they use, Lord Pef? Miners and servants from the planets in this system? He argues, kinda dismissive. Well, he does have a point. But I have an answer for that too. Those, if the miners are healthy and without mutation. Some of your own fresh acolytes for the tech marines, and some of Mycotakans and Voidsmen. The same for the Lamentus tech marines. For the Lamentus battle brothers we will use blank recruits in the Eastern Fringe, which have proven to resist the Rage Curse, in our testing with the Blood Angels. Blanks are such a wonderful and convenient genetic stock, after all. No mutations, no warp corruption, and that even works for organic parts and machine spirits. Forges Tobon makes them already. I announce and detach my Vambrace power shield, which is indeed made on Astobon, and hand it over. The Mechanicus fabricator scans and considers the power shield for a long hour, turning the orange energy field on and striking it with his portable arsenal. I only recognize a third of his weapons, and I think one of those pistols is a silencer, something only Ordo Malleus and the Grey Knights are allowed to have. Then again, someone has to produce these weapons, and that is only the Mechanicus. It does seem to work, Lord Lancefire. Sure, it is very low-level technology, as it is. Any forge can make these power shields, and Astobon still uses nanometer-scale forges. The quality is abject. The tech priest complains in disgust. He might puke his guts out, if he learns my forge retribution only has millimeter-scale quality control for the cheap infantry vehicles. So I don't tell him. See, I'm smart like that. Want to check my 7th implants while we're not busy? I may need a better implant, and more functions if I have to lead an Astartes chapter. Never been a space marine before, you see? I ask in a right tone. My skull gets shaven and cut open in a minute, and I hear grumbling and more quality control expletives. A few hours later, my skull is put back together, and a whole new world opens to me. I can see the datasphere now, hear the machine's constant droning and hear electric currents and taste infobytes on my tongue. And there's something else, a feeling of control over my armor. I have given you a mind impulse unit, Lord Lancefire. You will certainly be able to pilot any human ship or vehicle, up to night suits. I have also cleaned some blood clots and silver particles deposited on your right brain lobe. A tech priest has made a mess in there, so you were right to request a new implant. Silver and gold. Cheap materials like that will not sustain battlefleet-scale computations, nor resist stronger machine spirits like an Astartes battle barge has, via the captain's command throne. The fabricator explains in a weird tone, while holding out my old implant in a mechadendrite. Is the implant defective? I wonder out loud. Not exactly, no. You would be brain dead, if it was. But it was deformed by some type of warp phenomena, as you can see here. Where it was not covered in cerebral fluid and your blood, the golden eagle sigillium that shines, without bioelectric impulse. I think you had a relic in your head, Chapter Master Lancefire. The fabricator says in an awed voice and sprinkles some incense on the implant. The glow fades. I had an active warp emitter in my head? Would that even work on a blank? I asked in confusion. Not directly, no. But a powerful Primaris_Psych Aurora skilled navigator might be able to track the emanations of this relic. An alpha-level psyker, at least. He mused while tinkering with the exposed and slightly corroded sigil, slicing it off and placing it in front of me for inspection. The nail-sized twin Aquila still shined, very faintly. Would Jaren even know this tracker was there? Probably not. He wasn't a psyker. I powered up my better implant and began running simulations and timelines. Jaren took care of me for Justine, in exchange for some Inquisition job on Antax. Is that where he got this implant from? The Inquisition did use henchmen known as a sage, and they would like to keep track of them. Valuable knowledge in their brains, after all. Somewhere up the chain of command, there was a Lord Inquisitor with alpha-level psycho powers, who could track my movements from a sector away. Then of course, whatever the angel did to me, which activated the relic during the time when the sacred Astartes blood reached my brain. The red thirst followed, or was induced. Was this kind of Thorian plot? Some faction of the Inquisition keeping tabs on potential divine vessels? The Eldar avatars and their potential incarnations as an Eldar deity, and Myros was an Ordo Xenos Inquisitor. Avatars, enslavers, Psychonuane or vampires, they could all transcend the barriers of the real space and the immaterium, and the Thorians searched for a similar method which could allow the Emperor to return to a flesh body. And who was best friends with the Eldar, among the Lord Inquisitors? Was it perhaps Bronislaw_Chevak? Seemed the most probable conclusion, from the facts I had. Of course, I might be paranoid and nobody was actually looking at me like the next flesh suit of the Emperor of Mankind. But it made sense to be paranoid, especially if the Emperor himself was the one behind the scenes, pulling strings and arranging lucky accidents and angels showing up. I have seen that angel 3 times, which was 1,000,000,000,000 times more than anyone else. Oh Adam, my friend. Things must be really bad out there, if you rely on me to save you. What's next? You transform my lovely sisters of battle into living saints? Canis into a holy wolf? Maybe Janus? I murmured in my mind, holding the tiny golden eagle in my palm. Other potential plots ran in my mind, Inquisitors searching for Sensei, Emperor's flesh children and Eternals just like the Emperor, who they sacrificed ritually to grant their master extra strength via bloodline infusion. I doubted this was the case, as Eternals did not get old, while I needed life extension and that rejuvenate treatment to recover my youth. Anyway, there was little I could do, that I didn't do already. I had space marines, and ships and tanks and a good relation with the forges in the Segmentum, even had a small forge world of my own. I had my warrant of trade and an unauthorized Rosetta, and then I had heretical xenotech that helped change the odds of any battle. It was time to return to my kingdom and expand again. My captured ships will need to be discovered abandoned among distant fringe stars. A dozen nearby jungle worlds will need to be colonized, by importing more Katakan infantry regiments, tech priests and millions or billions of indentured women from any hive world in range. And after this stage, gather more strength, build more units and attack again. Wave after wave of colonization, growth and expansion, till my private empire outnumbered the dispersed Imperium 1,000 to 1. With the impending threat of a murderous inquisitorial investigation on its way, even the fabricator is slightly more motivated into finishing up the repairs of my ships. One after another, the corvettes are rearmed with torpedoes and loaded into their launching bays on the Icarus carrier, while the damaged battle barges are dragged into dockyards for a complete refit. So are the damaged cruisers and other vessels boarded and captured, while the traitors are kept disarmed and under guard, awaiting their trial. The last Astral Claws Cardinal-class heavy cruiser named the Thuth's Hound contained the Forge Master Arminius_Valthex, known for his advanced artificier-grade weapons and armor. This guy was so renowned for his skill that even tech priests would consult with him on various artifacts related to the Astartes. Well, Valthex was presumed dead after his cruiser's bridge exploded from a teleported plasma warhead, but he now simply laid in stasis among many other of his astral brothers. I had almost 16,000 claws, 300 mantis and 200 executioners among my trophies, but I would need a way to mind control them, just like Trazyn had his mind scarabs. Not really an urgent matter, but something to consider. Perhaps via those enslaver bones, as they did literally belong to a mind-controlling monster. Once my loyal Astartes were painted black in Deathwatch color, nobody would need to know their origin, right? The stolen ships would be harder to disguise, although this wouldn't matter for now. Crew and officers, servitors and tech priests will be needed for every single ship, and extensive repair and refit to make the warships effective when they had to battle outside the range of my cheating presence. I did send an astropath message to Sutha, informing my Rose of the official result of my crusade, and requested the Lamenters still in the Death Watch to be released into my care. That will take some time, but having a corps of veteran Marines as trainers for my blank recruits would be invaluable. She owed me a lot for all those Eldar prisoners, including a Farseer, so might as well spend that favor for my Astartes. More Geller generators had to be constructed and installed in every captured ship, but the trade with Forged World Angstrom was easily achieved by donating the damaged hulls, plus some of the spoils from my Magog plundering. All those ancient pattern weapons found with pirates and criminals were rather useless to me, as I lacked the expertise to repair them. I kept the scans of course, as STC templates would be valuable to other forges too. Even so, the fabricator did promise to begin constructing his own fleet of system-only torpedo corvettes, and to mount Nova cannons on the salvageable cruiser hulls. As for my other ideas, importing indentured serfs from nearby hive worlds to train new tech priests, or culling the underhives for more servitors? You do have the strangest ideas, Lord Lancefire. The Magus exclaimed, while we were going over the captured equipment from the traitors, including gunships, fighters, power and Terminator armor plus many broken tanks and weapons and other machines. Of course, honored fabricator. Repairing all these artifacts would take millennia otherwise. And then I would have to ask another forge for the privilege of examining and repairing these priceless relics we recovered from the Astral Claws and the Executioners. I still have to, for my own Lamenter's gruesomely butchered power armors and dreadnoughts. Probably forge Tigris or Metallica, while forging Caladian will take care of the Blood Angel's armor. I explained politely, and pointed at Master's Foros terminally damaged armor. No. I mean, don't take everything away, Lord Lancefire. Leave us at least 2 of every item, and we might uncover more great mysteries of the Omnissiah from them, by careful logic comparison and arduous machine canticles. He asked in almost panic. The situation was funny for me, but understandable from the Mechanicus perspective. It would be like showing some museum curator the original armor of Emperor Constantine, and then giving it to another museum for restoration. And that Contemptor_pattern_dreadnought. Are you certain it can be restored enough to inter my Captain Tybalt of the Blood Angel bodyguard? I asked with a sadder voice. It seemed some kind of phased claw had managed to rend even his blackstone armor plates, ignoring the shield as well. I had a suspicion what kind of technology stood at the base for that claw, probably one of those phased swords used by the Calidus assassins, or a similar weapon with Catan provenience. Astartes Tybalt valiantly held onto the arm of his Astral Claw's foe, allowing his battle brothers to kill his enemy, but his organs were all shredded beyond repair. I wasn't ready to allow him to die so easily though. The dreadnought itself was found empty in a sealed vault on the Mantis barge, but wasn't fully operational, although the atomantic shield still worked, and that was the most important thing. And I expect you want that Ghost Razor's gauntlet installed on the dreadnought as well. Alright, it can be done, but it will take a few years. The fabricator accepted after a few seconds of thought. He probably needed to work on this himself, which would guarantee perfect quality, and allow him to examine and learn all those secrets. Sneaky tech priest, but then I couldn't really complain. Great. You're amazingly helpful, fabricator, and do your cult Mechonicus proud. So you were saying something about a knight? I would need 2 of them, for me and my other pilot I rescued at Badab, I demanded with a slightly more pleading voice. Just a tiny bit, because I did have an Astartes chapter now. No more need to be ultra meek, just politely meek. A wave of metal tentacles blurred around him, and it seemed I touched a sore spot. I would gladly help, Lord Peth. It is why I gifted you with the best mind impulse unit in the galaxy. But my forge world cannot produce knights or titans. We have several god machines, but we only service and repair them. The Volcano Lance and Cannons templates from your STC gifts will allow us to field a dozen more titans in a decade, which is immensely important to our faith. I blinked in surprise, and then just sighed. Of course not all forge worlds had titan manufactoriums. I was used to richer forges after all. This was not Riser, who kept an Orkwog on their doorstep just to test the titans in combat. It's all right, fabricator. Let me see where your forge could be of help. Katakan regiments. Yes, the jungle warriors, once provided with armed sentinel walkers, will be very useful in establishing my dynasty on a dozen jungle worlds around my capital, and help me clear the orcs. Unlimited order for as many regiments you can obtain, with as many guardswomen as they can spare, dear Margus. And provide them adamantium blades and chest plates, like my other Katakans have. I'd say 1,000 sentinels per regiment, plus 500 chimeras and hydras for the mechanized regiments. I mused out loud, while picking up an Astartes heavy bolter in my left hand. The heavy bolter gun was straining my power armor even without firing it. Much too heavy even for a Katakan, but would work great on the sentinels and chimeras. Las guns wouldn't really work against orcs, just like the ongoing war on Armageddon proved. The stupid mushrooms were too resilient, and so were the Tyranids. And you want heavy bolters and flamers, possibly combi weapons on those sentinels? The Margus deduced as I strained to hold the heavy weapon in one hand. Looked great, but bolter pistols were the effective limit for my current armor. Chainsaw sword and flamer one arm, adamantium gun shield with heavy bolter on the other. Sealed cockpit with adamantium window blinds. Infrared auspex for night combat. Similar outfit for chimeras, flamer and heavy bolters. Tanks will not be that useful in jungles, but a wing of bombers per regiment could provide close air support. Promethium refinery and a bolter-round manufactorium for every settled planet, with 1,000 tech priests to oversee repairs. And 100 more bolt sniper rifles, per regiment. I added in a distant voice. Adamantium might be expensive, but there were megatons of it in the damaged hulls. A single cruiser could provide 1,000,000 tons of adamantium, enough to armor 1,000,000 sentinels. A sentinel is twice as small and 1,000 times cheaper than a knight, and the gun shield would be large enough to cover the shoulder socket in the bolter ammo drum. The chainsaw uses promethium as fuel, and same does the flamer, and the burning promethium would melt even steel, and more importantly, the flesh behind the armor. Very effective in jungles and versus organic enemies like orcs and Tyranids. A dozen Katakan regiments should be possible to requisition. But for more guardsmen and all that equipment, a few decades. The fabricator proclaimed while examining the sniper rifle that I pointed him to. A good sniper could kill 100 enemies every day. Times 100 snipers per regiment, they would devastate any enemy, even if fortified and entrenched. Not that orcs or Tyranids hid in trenches, but they weren't the only possible enemies, just the most numerous. The repairs on the damaged Astartes ships continued and the barges were being modified with a vertical torpedo cell block for 100 torpedoes, which should allow them to fight a battleship and even win. Similar to that reload system I first created for the Manticore missile launcher, the empty torpedo container could be extracted and replaced with a full one, increasing rearming speed by 10 times in zero gravity. The teleport rooms on the barges were also undergoing complete repair, while the Astartes were grumbling about having tech priests going all over their stuff. I didn't care much about that. Who were they going to complain to? Me? Just like former Master Huron had discovered, independent Astartes command of their chapters might be great for the absence of superiors, but that also meant no protection from those superiors. They were at my mercy, and mercy wasn't something I was willing to spend much. I spent my time overseeing my new Lamenter chapter and revising their codex and doctrine, tinkering with the hypnotic chairs that enforced loyalty and imparted automatic reflexes and knowledge of enemies and weapons. It would take decades to prepare a better codex, but my own STCs could be uploaded in the data vault, and various memetic subordination commands for the Inquisition or other high-ranking Adeptu of the Imperium could be slightly loosened or outright circumvented. There were also some highly coded mnemonic instructions with Mars signature imprints, which were probably part of the problem with the Lamenter's curse. Someone had experimented on them, right at their founding 5,000 years ago. Sadly, I didn't have clearance to delete them, so I might need to borrow other hypno chairs from the other barges or the staff at